I wanted to quickly give you a bit of a disclaimer before this episode. This is an episode that talks about alcoholism, something that affects many, many Americans and many people in this world. So I will tell you before the show begins to please consult your doctor, your mental health professional, your outreach group, your sponsor, your specialist before adopting any change to your dietary, physical, and or mental health regime. That said, let's begin. When over a year and a half ago, I made a conscious decision to start tracking everything I eat. Started to go on some sort of dietary plan, even though I had cheat days left, right, and sideways. The one thing that was still in my life was drinking. 516 days ago, that was the last time I drank. The thing is, for a whole week prior to that, I was drinking every night. 516 days ago, I drank enough for me to say no more. That's not going to be pertinent for me as I try to be healthier, live a cleaner life. This is the venture forward. Good evening once again, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome to the Venture Forward. I am John Venturini, a recovering addict of obesity, overweight, overeating, alcoholism, and gambling. And I just got wind that we were having a bit of an issue with YouTube tonight, so if you have friends that are watching this on YouTube, let's get them over to Facebook, as Restream had a bit of an issue trying to start the YouTube stream. And that said, let's continue with the story. In that, I realized I was an alcoholic for a while. I didn't realize that alcoholism was something that was part of this story. We talked last week about how overeating led to obesity, led to a life that was really a shortcoming of a lot of things in life. And what I realize now is this is something that goes hand in hand for a long time in my life. This is something that goes much akin to one another with the obsession of eating or overeating, or just eating. The quality of food isn't the greatest. There was also the obsession to drink along with that. So 516 days ago, I had my bottom. I had the night to end all night with respect to drinking. And we'll talk about that at some extent in a couple minutes. But I'll say this. We think about what drives us to drink. We get driven by the culture that's around us. We get driven by familial ties. We get driven by a lot of different facets. It's also on us to be cognizant of that and also be aware of the warning signs of that, either classically defined by by ICD or DSM, but also understanding what is too much and when does it become something where everything is blurry and I don't understand what's going on. So before I actually get to the deck here and additional information, I want to say hi to some of you that have joined us on Facebook. Hi, Sarah. How are you? Sorry about YouTube not working well this evening, but I will make sure a recording of this session will be up on YouTube this evening after the program. Alicia, good to see you. Glad you're here tonight. Thank you. Thank you for your words. I'm very proud of you too, Alicia. Without question, I'm very proud of you. And this is something that we both know very full well what this is about, and I'm just really honored to have you on the program watching tonight. So thank you. Sean, John V, the GOAT, as it were. Well, I appreciate that. I'm just someone who just woke up and is trying to realize what he has to do with his life. And if he can help others do that too, well, I'm really fulfilling the service arm of the triangle, aren't I? Good to see you tonight, Sean. Lisa, how are you? I'm glad to see you tonight as well. I'm glad to see all of you. I'm going to tell you a story now about... It's like that story time for a second. I'm going to tell you a story about exactly when I realized this was a problem, and moreover, how this really hindered me from any other goal I had in this life. So let me share my screen, and we're going to start talking about that. So I think it goes back to the story about the fact that I've been sober for 516 days, but I've been doing this whole tracking of the diet and tracking of this dietary regime for about 600 and change. And we'll talk about exact numbers momentarily, but it really becomes a question of how important does that story intertwine with this one? Well, you know the story I talked about last week in the sense that I was very obese. I was 480 pounds. And if you look at the surface, you would think, okay, well, that's obviously a question of overeating. That's a question of other things that are causing me to be that big. The thing is, in addition to that consumption of food, mass quantities of food, the consumption of alcohol became part of that story. This wasn't the only time that this realization was true. This is the night I'm talking about. May 30th, 2019. Now, granted, I'm on this path forward. I'm trying to lose the weight. I'm doing some sort of dietary regime. I have a screenshot of Lose It up on the screen there. And I did have a cheat night here and there. It was once a week. It was either Thursdays or Saturdays, but there was a cheat night, and that was the cheat night at a Mexican restaurant. But I think the thing I wanted to drive to your attention is this. In that evening, there was 5 margaritas, 5 jalapeno cucumber margaritas. There was a bottle of wine, almost a whole bottle of wine. There was about 2 or 3 servings of bourbon. And then if that wasn't enough, during that dinner, there were also Manhattans. I did not calculate how much percentage alcohol that is. I did not calculate what my BAL was. I couldn't tell you what that number was. I could tell you, however, that after that night, particularly 3:30 in the morning, I realized that is going to be the last time I ever do this. The way I felt afterwards was absolutely unacceptable, especially for the fact that I've been making a promise to myself to lose such an epic amount of weight now for the 3rd time, in that number being 300 pounds. How can anyone lose 300 pounds and drink like that? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Let's go to the big board. Today is Tuesday, October 27th. I've been on this dietary regime for 619 days. And I've been sober for 516 days. And also, I have stopped gambling. I have not gambled in the last 198. All of this, as I see it, first and foremost, is my venture forward to remove these things that have held me back for one reason or another. Tonight, the sobriety takes front and center because, quite frankly, without the diet, without that sort of eating regime, that sort of dietary regime, there is nothing else to talk of here. So, what does that also mean? Alcohol for the first 3+ months. In the last week prior to stopping the drink, I drank every night that week. Now, remind you, I was eating healthy on the most part, a little bit of keto sort of influence, but it wasn't that terrible except for the night I was at the Mexican restaurant. It took a night of jalapeno cucumber margaritas, bourbon servings, Manhattans, and red wine for me to have a very eventful and scary overnight. I had what they call the reversal of fortune at 3:30, 3:45 in the morning. And from that, I was bloodshot in my left eye for 7 days and was also nauseous for 5. The result to all this is something I think you can all gravitate to, in the sense that enough was enough. If I'm going to lose this weight for the third time and for it to stick, I cannot be doing stuff like this anymore, no matter what the situation is. And we'll talk about the particular situations in the coming weeks. There's a lot more to this story. But for brass tacks, bare bottom here, that sort of drinking will never sustain someone losing that much weight. Let's go back to the line chart, area chart I showed you last week about what this journey has been. Losing 275 pounds in 88 weeks, 89 weeks now. This has been a work in progress, but I want to point something to your attention. Look at the area right by May 30th on this pie chart, or this line chart rather. It was a steady weight loss. It wasn't the most exorbitant sort of weight loss, not for someone who was 480 pounds, mind you, but it was slow and steady. But that was the night, May 30th, the night I last had a drink. And I came to the realization to myself that, one, I'm going to be sick and nauseous for a while, so I'm not going to be eating or drinking much for a while. But the second thing is, certainly once I feel better, there is not a chance in heck for me to even think about drinking like that, or for that matter, drinking at all. Because there are other parts of this story going back the last 20 years where I should have stopped back then and I didn't. But I didn't realize that I'm an alcoholic. So we know what that world was in January of 19. We know what that world looks like now. I tie the alcoholism back to the picture that's on the left. That was done at a kickoff party for the 2019 year. And there were drinks and there was champagne and there was this, that, and the other thing. And granted, it was just another place for me to over imbibe. It had to stop. A lot of this had to stop. I don't think there's any right mind for me to adopt this sort of lifestyle without that going on. Now, I'm healthy. I'm at 205 pounds. I haven't touched alcohol in 516 days. There are a lot of things that I am working towards that is giving me a chance, that is giving me a better life, that is giving me that venture forward. So it goes back to serenity, doesn't it? Many people in this audience are in recovery groups. They know this prayer exactly. I'll say it. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. But here's the thing. That prayer also opens itself up for a lot of other things. If you're a member of Overeaters Anonymous or any sort of overeater support group, there is a chance you're saying that. If there's a chance for any other sort of support group, there's a chance you're saying that. So, with all of that, I've come to grow an understanding for how important that prayer is, not only the prayer itself, but the message therein. You can't control everything. As we would say back home, stop being stunad. You can't control everything. Only take care of the things you can take care of, and have the wisdom to know the difference between the difference of that you can take care of things and those that you can't take care of. It sounds simple, but when we get stuck in our own stuff, we forget that an awful lot, don't we? Let's go to some comments, because I've been going slide after slide for a while, but I want to bring some comments up on the screen real quick to talk this topic. Alicia says, hi, Sean. Wow, you are amazing. And Alicia also says hi to Sherry. Sherry says hi to Lish. Sean says hi to Alicia. And Sherry, I'm great. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you got the time right and everything. I'm so glad to see you. Lisa says hi to Alicia. Sammy, how you doing tonight, Sammy? Hope you're doing well. Sherry is sharing this with Desi. Sherry misses margaritas. Fact of the matter is, when I remember what those margaritas did to me, I don't miss them at all. Sherry says, why is my picture not coming up? Well, I hope that Facebook photo now pops up next to your comment. Alicia says, I see you. Thank you, Sherry. Sean says, I love the whiteboard. I got to tell you, and I alluded to this last week, the whiteboard is a clear and present reminder for me on what I'm doing. It has a lot of information there for me to be reminded of this journey, as if I don't feel it myself. I don't notice the pictures in the mirror and whatnot, and how great I feel. Some days, especially given this year, which I will not mention what that is for sake of not losing monetization, there's some days that have been rough. There's some days that have been rough for a lot of us. But we have to remain straight and narrow and on the forward here to make things better for ourselves. When we tie that love in for ourselves, we can spread that love to so many other people. And with respect to a lot of the people in this room tonight that are watching along, I know that you shared that love very much so. And I hope that I'm able to share my love with you. Sherry, finally seeing the famous whiteboard. It is a bit of a famous whiteboard now. I mean, we were talking about it in, there was a group I'm part of called LIDA, Live Every Day in August. And there was talk about whiteboards and everything. And it's like, hey, you guys don't know a whiteboard until you see this giant one over here. It's 5 foot by 6 feet. It's a big giant board, except I don't have it hung on this wall. It's like leaning. That's something I'll probably have to fix someday, but it works for me right now, and it has the information I need to. So the whiteboard is here. Sherry's a fan of the Burrito Del Mar. Sherry, what is in the Burrito Del Mar? Sean says, I also found that in the midst of my heavy drinking, your crave for food was there too, and not healthy kinds. No one's thinking about having a giant salad when they've just had a lot of alcohol. Sort of the food that they think of is couple of fast food chains and whatnot. So the sort of healthy food does not come to mind whatsoever. Thank you for your comment, Sean. Hey, Des, how are you? How's everything on the other side of the world? Hope you're doing okay. Sherry says, I was opposite. I would not eat purposely because then it takes longer to get drunk. Everybody seems to have a strategy about this, whether it was something that was instilled in you when you were in college, something that was instilled to you when you got out of college and you're in your 20s, Everybody has some sort of tactic or strategy. I'm not surprised to hear that, Sherry, and I know other folks feel the same way too. Sean says that's interesting. Yeah, everyone is different. Um, in college, it was Mexican food. It was burritos as big as your head. But then, of course, I had to go into McDonald's down the street to get French fries to go with it because I like food. Lisa says, I used to drink number one. Food was only to ease the hangover or after I had drank all my drinks I needed to eat very late at night. Wasted so much money on takeaways. Yep. Everybody has a story. Everybody has a strategy and a story that goes with it. I think in college, it becomes a question of where could I find it most inexpensively as a college student, right? Alicia says, I could never drink. I'm a lightweight. I have a feeling that if I was a lightweight, I would probably still be drinking. But then again, I think those two things were so tied together that I can't think of a world where I was clean and sober without being really giant and morbidly obese. Take it for what it is. Sherry says, me too. Serenity prayer becomes more deep the longer you remain sober. Yep. As it has been said for a very long time in the last 516 days, but also in the realization that, holy you know what, this thing ties to my food, that ties to every other addiction that I have. When that light bulb goes off, amazing things follow, but it requires that light bulb to go off. My hope and prayer is that for many, given what's going on, that light does go off, and people start realizing how everything forms together with respect to that sort of thing. Sarah says, me too. Leah says, we can only go forward. Backward is no longer an option. Leah, by the way, thanks again for the episode you did last week. Leah, I can't agree with you more than what you've put up there. It is so true. We can only go forward. There is no backwards. There is no alternative, as I put it up on my whiteboard. There is no alternative for me. This is my reality. This is my venture forward. And it's something that I know really great things can be born out of this. It's already starting to. Sherry says, seafood burrito in Australia. That sounds delightful. Hi, Sandy. How are you? Good to see you this evening. And Sherry says, French fries. Yeah, French fries for sure is a bit of a weakness. When I was in college, it was a bit of a weakness, and for me, any sort of strip of potato that's been deep fried like that and salted is always a problem. That said, the last year and change, I haven't gravitated to that at all, and I'm very thankful for that. Holly says, hey, JV and everyone. Good evening, Holly. Welcome to the program. Hope you're doing well. So that said, talk to Serenity. We talked about the steps. I won't go into the 12 steps because a lot of the folks in this room know what the 12 steps are. But the thing I have to say is that the 12 steps tie themselves to the other addictions, in addition to alcoholism or narcotics or overeating or gambling. You go to any of those programs, you will see those 12 steps. Now, granted, they'll have a little bit of a change that talks to the addiction in question. But in essence, those are the steps. And for the sake of not going through it, I mean, for the sake of the folks that are in this room that are part of the recovery groups, I won't go into the 12, but it really just begins with you admitting that you are powerless against what is bringing you down, what is holding you back. And then everything works from there, because there are things that you've done through these addictions that weren't right to the people around you. So that sort of work through those 12 steps, coming up with your own inventory, things like that are very important. Now, I'm not saying that you have to necessarily go to an AA program per se to get off of the alcohol, but I'll tell you, more people than not will talk about AA or Al-Anon or anything related. So the steps are important, and that's why the steps are on that slide. A couple more comments. Let's see. Sherry says, good job. And Holly says, Alicia, same, I can't drink either. At this point in time, really, you've come to the point where this is not serving me any utility now, and I live a much cleaner, happier, healthy, smarter life without that in the way. Whether the question is the alcoholism or the overeating or whatever the addiction is that's holding you back, now is the time to stop. If this year hasn't been any lesson for anyone in this world, this is the time to change things. This is the time for that light bulb to go off and for you to do the right thing, not only for yourself, but for your friends, for your family, for the world. It's that important. It sounds overly dramatic. I would say no. It's not overly dramatic at all. We all make a difference in this world. So think about that. Sherry says, amen. She also says, steps are as important as a serenity prayer. That's why they're together on this deck for sure. And Alicia says, hey, beautiful. Couple more slides, and then I want to show you something that was important that happened a little over a month ago. We talk about alcoholism and alcohol use disorder. Basically, it's any drinking of alcohol that results in mental or physical problems. It could be, I don't know, morbid obesity as one of those things. It's in the list. Basically, it ranges from mild and imperceptible without testing to severe and grossly overt. In my case, it was grossly overt. When I would go to business dinners and whatnot, and I would barely remember the conversation that took place or what we're trying to present. Didn't happen much, but I'm amongst friends, I could say that. And I know others that it happened to as well. I know it was a problem. So we think about alcoholism, or AUD, as either the abuse of it or the dependence of it. For the fact that I drank 7 days in a row in a time where I'm trying to lose 300 pounds, I would say I was dependent. When I was adding bourbon to my coffee in the morning, I was dependent. So the thing is, it's talked about in the DSM from a mental health perspective. It's talked about in the ICD as far as what clinicians will use, physicians and whatnot. But at the end of the day, it's something that is pressing a lot of people, not only in this country, but in the world. And especially given the traumatic events of this year and the sort of new normal, hate using that phrase too, it's basically standing on its side. And there are a lot more people gravitating to it, which is scary. It's very scary. And then I think the other thing, I'll get to that in a second. There are a couple more comments that came in. Sherry says, knew you would like these, Des, with a hug and a kiss. Merc, welcome. Good to see you tonight. He says, what's up, people? Sherry says, Merc is in the house. Merc is in the house. How you doing, Merc? Alicia says, hey, Merc. Merc says, you too, Des. Holly says, hey to Merc. Merc says, good evening. Merc. And then Merc also says, how could you ruin a good coffee like that? Well, Merc, when you have a problem, you have a problem. And anything that's coming off of the espresso maker or anything that's coming off of my Keurig was basically free game for the problem to continue. So yes, that is a bastardization, if you will, of a perfectly good coffee. I will also say that there were many dinners that ended with me having a double espresso with a side of Zambuca. So there has been a sort of precedent for that sort of abuse of alcohol, as you would put it, Merck. Like it says, pour coffee. Agreed. Doesn't matter if you're Starbucks or Dunkin'. That is a waste of a good coffee. Sherry says, insanity of an alcoholic. The tongue sticking out. I wanted to replicate that. And then Matt, how you doing tonight? Hope you're doing well. He says, hey, I didn't know you were live. I'm glad I'm catching you, John. Glad you're here, Matt, for sure. So something significant took place about a month and change ago, September 15th of all days. It's when I went to the cabinet that was in my kitchen and I realized I have too much or any alcohol in this house. And it doesn't make any sense, as I have basically waned off of that and not have had a drink in 400 some odd days at the time, 516 a day. There's no reason for that alcohol to be in that pantry closet in my kitchen. So I did something that was really important. I got rid of it. I got rid of all of it. It was a collection of alcohol that has been coming to pass for the last 10 to 15 years. Just so much of it. And really, I wasn't going to test anything at all. I'm getting rid of it. Now, on the most part, it went down the drain. There is a friend of mine in Philadelphia that got a little bit of the sort of exquisite bottles, but all the alcohol is gone. There's not a drop of it around here. Because that was my promise to myself, that I am clean and I am sober. And I don't need that in this house. Looks something like this. Well, first of all, I wanted to talk about that in a second. Let me show you this. There were bottles like gin. There were bottles of Johnny Walker of many different varieties, whether they were bottles of black or gold or blue, that really had to go by the wayside. And I spent a good amount of time that day, September 15th, pouring it down the drain. I actually recorded some of this. I want to share that with you right now. Was my gin of choice for the martinis I drank. That's going bye-bye too. Let me do this live just to make sure everybody understands what's going on here. Bottles open. Bottles poured. This has not been easy. You would think it was easy because I haven't had a drink in 400 and some odd days, 470 days, but this is hard. These are chapters of my life that I'm getting rid of because I knew how much they were hurting me. They were hurting me. They were hurting me big time. And the thing is, we can talk about how we need to take that venture forward, that step forward. But until we do something like that, that really made it really clear to me what is going on. I recorded some other videos of me pouring other bottles, but I'm not going to inundate this venture forward tonight on that. The main thing is, There was a lot of alcohol that was poured down that drain, but also a lot of memories that were poured down that drain from the sense that these were things that were holding me back. We'll talk about more about exactly what was tied to those things in the coming weeks. But for the sake of this episode tonight, I'm an alcoholic. Without question, I'm an alcoholic. And that was important. I wanted to show something from the previous slide real quick, in a sense that this is not the first time I made that realization that the alcoholism is a thing. The thing is, I never put the term alcoholic on it until now, until in 2019. When I lost the weight for the first time in late 2001, all of 2002, there was a period of time where I wasn't drinking, but I was also going to the gym, and I was, really just getting myself into a healthier place. Would I have a light beer every now and then? Yeah, but I wasn't drinking the way I was for a good amount of time. We could fast forward a bit to 2010, 2011, and I was sober for about 6 to 8 months before I started drinking again. It was some sort of birthday party I went to, and they were bringing beer over, and as we always say, 1 became 2, became 4, became 8. And there was just no sort of... But again, I wasn't putting the sort of qualification, wow, I might be an alcoholic. I was like, oh, well, I just haven't had a drink in a long time, so I had a few. No bueno. No bueno. And if you fast forward that, I end up gaining that weight back by the time I'm back here in Pennsylvania in 2013. All that weight is back. And then you could tie on another 40 pounds by the time of the beginning of 2019. So you go from 440 down to 245. And then in January of 2019, I'm at 480. And alcohol was definitely part of that story. Without question, it was part of that story. So it just goes to show you that you have to really take a long look inside to see what is interconnected to this. There are a lot of things that are interconnected to this. If we don't pay attention to that, we don't pay attention to what drives us, there might be problems. And I don't say there might be. There absolutely will be problems, especially given the world that we live in now. We got some comments, so let's go through them. Sherry says, ooh, I found a stash. I will PM to you. If it's videos of you pouring it down the drain, please, by all means, PM them to me. We will celebrate together in you getting rid of the things that I got rid of. Sarah says, I know that was hard, JV. I remember that was a big day. It was a very big day. It was a day where I think I was, one, relieved, but also there's a whole multitude of different emotions going on here. Relief is one of them, but also browbeating of opportunities and times that were wasted because of that crap. There are other associated memories that are tied to that are very painful. That just now, with me removing that, I feel really free and really liberated of it. But it took a long time, for sure. There are so many things that are tied to it. Over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about this, because it's a lot more than alcoholism, overeating, obesity, next week gambling. There's a lot more going on here, and we're going to work through it, for sure. Matt says, correction, there's no reason for that alcohol not to be given to your good friend Matt. I'm still not mad at you about that. Ha ha. Really funny, Matt. Really funny. If you want that, there's a good friend of mine in Philly that can talk to you about that. But I certainly, it's not going to you. It's with him, and not much of it, because they're all exquisite bottles, and he collects that stuff, and he doesn't have a problem like me. So it's over there. Des says, great job, John. Thank you, Des. Appreciate it. Leah says, so proud of you. Thank you, Leah. I'm very proud of you too. You've done so much in so little time in the last year and change. It goes beyond. I cannot put into words how proud of you I am. So thank you, Leah. That means so much to me. Sean says, dumping all my alcohol was a big moment too. It's a big moment for many of us. So it's something where we realize that this is one of the symbols that tied us down, that basically held us back. Getting rid of that was so important. Mark says that had to have felt great. Yes, it did. But there are other things that, with that relief, there are other things that were just like reminders of other things that happen. But yes, showing you that video tonight, I'm beyond joyful about it. Very much so. And this is a very hard thing to talk about. This is not something you can just go out, hey, I'm an alcoholic. But I think in telling this story about all the other things that have gone on in my life, especially in me trying to take this venture forward, I had to tell you this story. Outside of the weight, outside of the overeating, which was first and foremost, it's what we spent last week on. Second, a very close second, is the alcoholism. Matt says, gin, yuck, dump that stuff, tastes like pine needles. Well, grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. Grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, Matt. So we could talk about how I hate vodka. More of a gin guy. Sherry says, wow, so bloody strong. Yeah, it is very bloody strong. But the thing is, for some they're gin people, and for others they're vodka people. So again, it just equates to whatever your tastes are. Doesn't matter to me. I'm never touching it again. But it equates to what your tastes are, for sure. Sarah says, so glad you recorded that, JV. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah. I appreciate that. Lisa says, yeah, great to record this. Yeah, I recorded a lot of the bottles that were poured down the drain. I really needed to chronicleize basically that act. Not only for any sort of recovery group, any sort of video I share with my friends for this, obviously, but I had to share it for myself. I had to make sure I had that, so I realized exactly why I did it. It's very important. Leah says, time for happier chapters. Leah, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Des says, hope there are no naked flames around the house. Last time I checked, no, we're good. Holly says, John, you inspire me. Holly, you inspire me too. Very much so. Sherry says, yeah, he is so knowledgeable. Back at you, Sherry. You too. You do incredible work with the recovery groups. I appreciate everything you do, and it's really an honor that you're here tonight. Sarah says grief. Yeah, grief. There's grief in the sense that there was time that was wasted in my life that I could be doing other things. There could be newfound places for me to be, newfound people for me to be with, newfound things for me to do, newfound hobbies for me to try out, conquest to conquer, that sort of thing. That's where the grief basically stems around. But there's also a lot of strong pride that comes out of me doing what I did on September 15th. So, yes, there's grief. But as Leah said before, happier chapters are here now. So I'm very thankful for that. I'm thankful for all of you. Sean says, you have so much strength and wisdom. So do you, Sean. So do you. Des says, wasted 40 years of my life with addiction. Yeah. You talk about the groups that we're in, there are a lot of years that were wasted with addiction. But the thing is, we're changing that, aren't we? We're changing the story. We're flipping the script. We're making this a script where we can actually do something that is so sustaining, so fulfilling, so beneficial, so loving, so caring. That's what this is about. No question. That's what this is about. Merck says, I think I'm a coffee and water people. Well, yeah, coffee and water works for me. Sparkling water. Alicia says, some of us, it's drugs. Again, there's a lot of addictions that have held us down. And it takes a very strong mind and a very strong heart to work through it. Very committed one, too. Sherry says, iced coffee all the way for me, Merc. I like iced coffee. I'm an iced Americano sort of guy. Even when it's cold outside? Absolutely, Merc. I will drink an iced Americano on a 10-degree day. It's been done. People have seen me do it. Colleagues, namely. And I think the first reaction's the same. Are you freaking crazy? And I say, yeah, I am. Would you like some? Matt says, is it okay to get addicted to doing awesome fun things like indoor skydiving? Yes. Yes. Indoor skydiving, bungee jumping, skydiving, all of that. It's a bit of an inside reference, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen soon. Fingers crossed. Matt says, I've enjoyed hot coffee on the beach in 100-degree weather. Love me some coffee. Well, Matt, that's one thing we definitely get along on. We love coffee. Leah says, I spent 7 years married to a drug addict and alcoholic. It's brutal on families. Absolutely. Absolutely. I cannot imagine the depths for which that goes. And I can tell you from a familial sort of perspective, my mom is a dry drunk, and my two aunts, they imbibe in front of her, knowing full well that she can't drink right now or ever because she's diabetic. So it's something where that dynamic becomes something where it is really difficult to watch, especially given the nature of a dry drunk and the longing for it and the fact that she hasn't touched it in about 6 years because she's a type 2 diabetic. Very hard to watch. Families play a role in this, just like our friends do, just like our colleagues do, just like the people around us do. It is up to us to bring that love inside, first and foremost. If we don't do that, we don't stand a chance. Alicia says, I love skydiving. Sherry says, yet to try skydiving. Sherry says, rain, hail, of shine. Rain, hail, or shine. You do skydiving in any of those three conditions. And a dry drunk is someone that still yearns for the sickness they had at one time in their life, Matt. Leah says, I made a trip to the liquor store every other day for him because it was easier than the fight that came if I refused. I'm sorry that happened to you, Leah. I'm really sorry that happened to you. The thing is, realizing it's a problem, coming up with a plan, and moving forward is what's important. Taking care of yourself, loving yourself is most important because then you could spread that. Granted, you could spread it to those that will listen, those that care, but you're going to spread it for sure. By the way, Leah, thank you for sharing that. I really, really am thankful you did. Sammy says, hey, John Rex. Sherry says, no rain, hail, or shine to drink iced coffee. Got it. I thought for skydiving for a second, but then you think you're skydiving or indoor cliff. It's like it requires hands. Don't know what I was thinking. Alicia says, dry drinks have the behavior of an alcoholic. They are just sober. In the case of someone who is a type 2 diabetic who's been told by their doctor not to drink because it will basically escalate their type 2 diabetes to possible death, that's exactly what's going on with my mother. Mark says, hey to Sammy Cool. So I think alcoholism is something where I really feel that the moment I came to the realization that I am an alcoholic, it made life a lot easier. It made life a lot easier from the sense that I now have a method for me to lose this weight, to be a lot more healthy, and for me to live a better life. But it took 20 years to figure that out. 20 years. 3 attempts at losing the weight. But I'm there now. And if you have any question about that, I have a whiteboard that will prove it to you. Matt says, let's drink coffee while skydiving. Yeah, you can come up with some sort of, straw or system, just, yeah. It's 20, you can do anything you can this year. Susan says, thank you for caring and sharing. It takes a lot of strength. Thank you. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that. I appreciate that an awful lot. And on that, I will say what I say at the end of all of these streams. Well, there's one more comment. I was gonna wrap this, and then I got this. Mark says, how did the alcohol feed into the reading addiction or vice versa? Well, the reading addiction became born out of the fact that I have a lot more things to do. And I don't know, in 2020, there are a lot more things to do because there's not much of anywhere for us to go because of quarantine. So that's how the reading addiction really came into play. Good point, though. Alicia says, I'm in, Matt. Leah says, no skydiving for me. I'm scared. Matt says, nice. Now I'm juxtaposing comments here. And Mark says, I meant eating. And on that, I will say what I say at the end of every one of these. Stay safe, stay strong, stay sane, and please stay sober. You're worth it. We'll be back Thursday night at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific to continue a two-parter, or part 2 of this, on alcoholism. I have a guest scheduled to tell their story, and it's going to be one that's going to open your eyes for sure, because we all are going through this to a certain degree. And to take the words of another recovery group, we do recover better together without question. We also stream better together as well. Have a great night. Take care. We'll see you on Thursday.